Prison seems more like home each and every day. Every moment passes like hours. However, the worst part isn't the fact you're in here with the insane and those who've committed the most heinous acts like Al Capone. It's the screams, rattling empty cells. The voices of the damned and the devil himself tempt those within its walls to go mad. Horrific things have happened here, and many have died before you. This seems like a sweet release in your God honest truth, but your time won't come for another 26 years in this place, only to become another wailing soul. Since your death, you appear stuck in this place for not just your physical life, but your afterlife as well, screaming for help and rattling your now empty cell for all eternity. And welcome back to the 5th Haunting Files episode of A Delve Deeper. I can't believe we've done that many. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm here with my co-host, Joey. And follow us as we search for the files for a deeper understanding, finding, and meaning behind some of the world's greatest mysteries, hauntings, cryptids, and mythos. Come with us as we attempt to take a delve deeper. And if the Al Capone bit in the beginning story wasn't a hint, we're covering today Eastern State Pen.
Favorite haunted locations of all time. It's very, very, very creepy, and it is in Philadelphia. It's one
Where
of
all
those
creepy
prisons.
things live.
Yeah, I was like, it's in one of those prisons where so many famous people have been incarcerated there, and
Oh, yeah.
it's been around for a long time. I think it's 1820.
Yep, so it opened up in 1829, and when it opened up, there was like only maybe 300 other prison buildings worldwide that kind of shared the same model. But Philadelphia, the Eastern State Pen specifically, at the time of its opening, was the largest prison at the time.
It was also the most expensive thing to ever come out
Yeah.
of us. So yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and plug this because I think it's important. If you guys ever want to, you can go to the Eastern State. You can go easternstate.org/explore/online tour, and you guys can actually view the entire map and everything while we're kind of
Oh,
going
yeah.
through it as well. Because it is one of those things that, like, if you're visualizing it, to look at it from Google Maps and stuff, it's insane. It's huge. It's
Right, and it was at the time it was a departure from traditional prison design because it was a radial floor plan. So like every cell had a skylight, a form of plumbing, central heat. It was a luxury prison for its time. It's still prison, but for its time.
well, I remember that they were also playing around with the what is it? So they were playing around with the rehabilitation stuff
Yes.
a lot in this.
And this it's unrelated, but if you try to go do those tours and if you take the audio guided tours, there's a chance you're going to get Steve Buscemi guiding you as you take the tour through this, which is pretty wild
Beautiful,
in my opinion.
beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Love Steve Buscemi.
And this whole penitentiary is insane. Like today, now in today's era, you can actually
Mhm.
purchase tour tickets. You can go online. You can shop stuff. It's open from Wednesday to Mondays. It even has Halloween attractions during the Halloween. It turns itself into a haunted house with 3 separate haunted houses, one for each third of the building. Pretty interesting.
Right.
Pretty interesting
What's
stuff, and it's transformed quite a bit from what it was
Oh
because it
yeah.
closed all the way back in 1971.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's which is so funny to me too. So it opened in 1829, closed in 1971. However, it was designated as a National Historic Landmark in 1965. So after it was a
Yeah,
historic landmark, it still continued to be a prison for like
for
6
6
years.
years. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, pretty much all they were waiting for is they're like, well, we can't really transfer these dudes, and this is kind of the only
Yeah.
place we got at the moment. So we're gonna go build a different one while this happens. So I was like, Kind of
Yeah.
funny for me, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
an
because it's
interesting.
basically extreme solitary confinement. Like,
Hmm.
everybody had their own cell and stuff.
Yeah, it was extreme for that, and it also had its death row as
Yes.
well, to which many, many, many people have died. But this is
Just
definitely
a
one of my
couple. No,
favorites.
just kidding.
Yeah, just a few, maybe like a handful
100.
at most. But yeah, we have like a ton of the interesting part of this obviously is that it's turned into what it is now. It's no longer a prison. It's more of a museum
Right.
slash attraction for
Yeah, it's like,
tourism and stuff.
Alcatraz in San Francisco.
Yeah. It's no longer the prison that it was then,
Mm.
so but it
Yeah.
is interesting to see how many of these prisons, and we'll definitely go over Alcatraz as well. It's one of the other haunted locales. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but this is one of those prisons that I really like because there's so many things that are going on, and there's so many infamous people that have been here and died here, and there's a lot of haunting things about
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So it is considered one of the most haunted penitentiaries in America. So
Yeah, and their class of inmate kind of varied wildly too. Like the first man put in there was a man arrested for burglary in October of 1829. And then they also had like Al Capone in there who, if you don't know who Al Capone is, I don't have time to go into it here, but do some googling. That man had a lot more than burglary under his belt, okay?
quote in the Roaring Twenties, he was he ruled an empire of crime for gambling,
Yeah.
prostitution, bootlegging, bribery, narcotics trafficking, robbery, protecting
Yeah.
of racketeering and murder. But that is not what he is. That's just what he's convicted of. That is not what he is estimated. Yeah, if you
Right.
ever want to watch Al Capone little thing before you watch this, sorry, why he was known for his kindness.
Right. And then it remained super solitary confinement too until 1924 it looks like, and that's when they introduced group dining halls. Um but by 1926, so 2 years after that, the penitentiary was only originally designed for 250 inmates. 2 years after group dining halls, that number jumped to 1700. Shortly after that, in 1933 and in 1944, the first prison riots occurred. In this prison's first prison riots, I should be specific.
Well, we all know that prison riots are just the best, the most calm experience for very many people. That's one of the things about that's absolutely terrifying about prisons is prison riots is that there is like in terms of ratio from prisoners to prison guards is
Yeah.
like 10 to 1.
Oh, yeah,
It's
it's insane.
crazy.
And if you've ever watched, like Orange is the New Black or the old show Oz from HBO, yeah, those are romanticized versions, but the danger they portray that the prison riot risk poses to both guards and prisoners is very, very real.
It is
Like,
very
people
rare
die in
that
these.
yeah, I was gonna say it is very rare that not at least one person doesn't die
Right.
or is severely injured to the point where they die later on.
Some life-altering injury could happen or something intense like that, and that could be day 1, and it could go for months, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Depending. So, yeah,
It can
definitely
it can
terrifying.
last hours. Again, it's one of those things where it's like those riots last a long time, and to control that many people with the amount of people that you have is again disheartening to say the least.
Right. And then we mentioned that it closed in 1971 and it's a museum now. And that's because in 1980, the city of Philadelphia bought it from the state of Pennsylvania with the intention of commercial redevelopment. However, in 1988, they realized its historical significance and they hired a task force to restore and preserve the building, and that's what they did until they opened it as a museum in 1994. I was 2 years old.
I was not alive. I was still in development at that point. But let's see. I kind of want to get straight into the haunting portion of this because that's what we're here for. That's what we're here. we're not here for to talk politics and talk the evil of the world. What are you talking about? Anyway, so this is considered to be one of the most haunted locations in the world. And again, it really wasn't more for anything besides just unwanted and corrupt people. Men, women, and children were housed alongside like petty criminals and violent killers. So like they didn't really care who was in there. They just kind of all shoved them in there. From people that were like pretty small time crimes to like maximum security need people. So there was everyone from everywhere here, and obviously that didn't leave a good impression on a lot of things because at the end of the day, a lot of people ended up dying because of this. Either they were killed violently from other inmates or during the kind of riots that we were talking about. And
Right.
it's very crazy to understand that the pure amount of things that went wrong in this area because
Oh yeah, the amount of negative energy stored in this place has to be
that's
astronomical
that's
for
what I was gonna
sure.
say. Is like it's just the ideas and the flow of negative energy has to be absurd with the amount of varying peoples and ideals going on at all times.
Yeah, it's there's so much that happened, and there's so many, like you said, wide variety of peoples and ideals here that the amount of negative energy stored in this one place is it's uncomprehendable, really. And so it does not surprise me in any way, shape, or form that this is haunted. Whenever we hear a prison, an insane asylum, something like that is haunted, I just automatically am like, oh yeah, that makes
It is
sense.
so hard to not believe it, and even with that, the ghost hunters from Sci-Fi Network, uh, found they got video footage of an apparition of a man walking through cell block 12. They have the Travel Channel's Most Haunted, and they recorded multiple objects moving on their own. And the investigators of the production claim to have communicated with not just one, but up to 17 different spirits.
Yeah. Yeah, they caught several full apparitions apparently here. Like full shadows of people and like things moving and like right in the center of the prison is that one you were talking about, I believe, with the ghost adventures where they found straight up in the center of the prison there was like a full body apparition that just
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen a lot of these
Mhm.
episodes as well.
Yes.
And one of the main things is with the tour guides and the guests. There's a ton of stuff. So with the aging prison open for tours, people can't stay away, right? It's
Right,
located
of
in the middle
course.
of Fairmont Street. Just so in case you want to know, it's in the middle of Fairmont Street and is one of the most visited locations. And though thousands of people visit every year, that also means that several of them emerge with their own ghost stories. So a few guests have claimed to glimpse a man, like get a glimpse of a man standing in the guard tower on the property, but there's
Oh
no
yeah.
way to physically get on top of it. The brick stairs have crumbled away years ago at this point. So like they'll see this man just like patrolling up there, and there's just no way that he could have got up there. And other employees and tourists have heard whispering, giggling, weeping all throughout the property. So
Yeah.
much so that some of them, many of them quit and don't last more than a week. And when they investigate where the noises are coming from, they never find any sources. And there's apparently an apparition of a woman spotted so often that employees named her the Soap Lady, as she sits in the
Yes.
last cell on the second floor wearing white. And the second floor held the women's cell block where the prison was operational.
Yeah. They like we said, the negative energy here, like it's easy to believe that it's haunted because of all the different ways people did die here. I have several stories here. One inmate thought an officer was trying to poison him, so he beat that officer to death and then took a nap in his cell. Like he just beat that guard to death and then took a nap in his cell till another guard came basically and they
Same.
dragged him out and stuff. Inmates would often push guards or officers over the railing to fall to the floor below. Um, this one is crazy. There's an actual ledger of death. You can go find it through the archives. And in 1859, all it reads is inmate died by masturbation.
I will say something about that too. Do you know how common that was?
back
Yeah,
then.
it's because they would put that down if somebody died from, like, a heart attack or something like that while doing something that should be private time.
Right.
And so they would find that's not just, like, one instance, there's a ton of those instances. And this is
Yeah, that's
just,
just the first one I found was 1859.
yeah, it applies throughout a lot of history too. If you go into different, penitentiaries and different, um, insane asylums and stuff, they also log that a lot. Just from the time being, they didn't really put 2 and 2 together that it could have been, like, a heart attack or
Right.
something else.
And it wasn't just the inmates either, like, the guards were pretty fucked up here too. Not only
Mhm.
were they allowed to torture anybody that broke the rules, they found new creative ways to do it. So, for instance, they had something called the iron gag. So, if an inmate broke the no communication rule, it'd be an iron that was clamped onto their tongue and tied basically to their wrist. So, any movement would pull and rip on the tongue.
Yep.
They also had something called the madness chair. If someone went crazy, they just tied them in this chair and then left them for days. No food, no bathroom breaks. They just tied them in a chair and left them for a little bit.
You get 2 days in the chair. Oh my god, no! Like, that's
Yeah,
insane to just be able to
that's
just
so
you
crazy.
could just put someone in a fucking chair for 2 to 3 days and be like, "Eh, it's whatever." And
That's
this is
whatever.
a much
Yeah,
different
exactly.
time, obviously, but, this is way kind of in the same era with the insane asylums where they treat these people because not only did, Eastern State Penn house, again, like, men, women, children that were convicted, psychotics, and, like, people that were in there for violent crimes and everything else. To a degree for me where I'm like, "Jesus Christ." Like, they had every
Right.
kind of person in here, from sane to the insane. So, it was like, for them and seeing all the different deaths that happened and knowing about all the different things that went down, especially between prisoners, because you gotta think too, during this time, the prisoners would act against other prisoners more often
Oh
because they
yeah.
are also more available and they know that the guards don't care about them. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a Wild West type situation where like anything goes in that prison. And it's true. Like a lot of them would just be shoved in there and then forgotten about until they either
Yeah.
died or their sentence was up. Which even then, sometimes their sentence would be up, and since they don't have any way to know, like they don't really have a sense of time, a
Right.
lot of them get stuck there forever, even though it's like a 4-year sentence, 2-year sentence. A lot of them ended up staying 15, 20 years plus. And their record keeping was just terrible, and they never really paid attention or cared about these people at all. So a lot of them
Yeah, they didn't have
focused
the
on making their lives in the prison.
yeah, they didn't have all the agencies and checks and balances and stuff that we had. And I mean, shoot, this is so old that the idea of solitary confinement as reform is actually something that came out of the house of Benjamin Franklin and the Quakers and stuff. They were in his house when they first suggested
Ew,
that, and that's what prompted them to build this prison.
Quakers.
Quakers love their oats.
They scare me. They scare me, Nate. They're
Oh yeah,
scary.
they're terrifying. Do they make you quake? No.
Yep, I quaked at the Quaker convention. Yeah, this this whole place is insane. It really is in terms of like reading up on the different kinds of deaths and everything because Al Capone had died in 19 like he was in there and died in 1947. I'm trying to remember because he was sentenced for 11 years and on November 24th, 1931. I believe no, let me see. I'm trying to figure out the exacts here because he did get transferred to Alcatraz in 1934.
Right,
So,
and he got transferred because he was, like, freaking out. He kept saying that he could hear, his buddy, one of the guys basically that he betrayed. Like, we won't go full out and say he did, but basically, he said that he could hear him basically taunting him,
okay,
and that was
so
one of the reasons they
he
moved him.
was put into the Eastern State Pen on August 8th, 1929. So he had been inside the prison for some time before he was
Yeah.
transferred out.
Yeah, this is also the one I believe where Shawshank gets its inspiration from because in that movie the guy digs a tunnel with a spoon, and that happened with Slick Willie Sutton. He dug a tunnel with a spoon back in 1945.
Yeah, I heard about that. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole story with Al Capone here is very interesting because of the low security in the area. Really, he was able to kind of live and get like anything he wanted. Like he had like a
Oh
TV,
yeah.
he had a living
Yeah, they
room,
said he decorated his
and
cell.
like oil paintings, fine furniture, practically living like a king.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was so cozy in there because he just had money and he would pay the guards not to say anything. So
Makes
he
you wonder how
pretty
Diddy's
much
living.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. If you sold every bottle of baby oil, you could make that's like a pallet, bro. That's like a whole pallet.
So many.
The the fact that he was living in luxury and then he just was like every single day, by the way. This was not like oh, he said this once a week. No, it is documented that he said this every day. Is that he would
Yeah.
let out blood curdling screams in the darkness, begging for someone named Jimmy to leave him alone. And this was something that occurred every night while he was there.
Yeah.
On very
Yeah,
rare
that's
occasions, he would.
he
So
almost went completely insane there and like lost all sense of himself because it was that vivid and that bad for him. Like that's insane, intense. If I can English today, that's really intense. Like I have night terrors. I taught myself the lucid dream, and so I can usually work my way back out of them. But I have woken up in the middle of the night screaming before and was like, you have enough time to think, what's that screaming? And then you go, oh, that's me. Like,
that's what it feels like sometimes. I mean, there's a couple times that I've even woke up from stuff like that, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Like you
yeah,
don't realize what you're doing until it. Yeah.
yeah. And this wasn't like that
The
for him. It wasn't he just woke up screaming. He was awake and then would let out screams way before ever falling asleep because Jimmy was messing with him. Or what he assumed is the ghost of Jimmy.
Well, a
I
lot
wasn't
of them
there. I
believe
don't
that
know.
it's Jimmy Clark, one of the men that he killed in the execution order for the St. Valentine's Massacre. But even though
Right.
he was released from the Eastern State Penitentiary, this entity continued to torment him. And out of desperation, he hired a medium later on that just didn't work. And that did cause him to lose his mind and end up in a
Yep.
mental institution the last year of his life.
Yep. Which is so crazy. It just goes to prove karma catches up with all of us.
And that's one of the things that is very crazy to me. Is just how much happened in this one confined area. Like we were talking about the island of Bavaria, and to me, that's the kind of the similar thing where it's like there's just so much history in this one building. Now it doesn't span centuries. It does span a long enough time to kind of be like, wow, there's like these single cells that they were
Almost
put
though.
into were pretty like the accommodations inside the first cells were lavish, so to speak, on paper when it opened in
Right.
1829, and they had like a ton of amenities, right? Like they had
Right.
like the baseball. I
Indoor
believe they had the
plumbing and
yeah.
heating, a separate exercise yard.
They had the
Yeah.
hospital there. They had the what is it called? The surveillance hubs. Like they for or sorry, the baseball fields. I was looking at the wrong one. Yeah, the baseball
Surveillance
fields
hub.
is they had like an entire baseball field to just hang out, play.
Yep.
They had a kitchen and bakery for people to come in and out, do whatever they want. They didn't have jobs.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like a you just yeah, you just go. You want some bread?
Right.
Just go make some bread.
And in 5 more years, it will technically be 2 centuries old.
True.
It is an old place. It's not
Oh,
ancient,
definitely.
but it's old.
It's old for sure. But like at that point, they had like the heating and running water, flushing toilets, and it was
Right.
always clean. But it wasn't like a hotel clean. Okay, like that's not good.
Right, it's still a prison.
Yeah. So again, with the Quakers, thought of the unnecessary contact could derail that rehabilitation, like you were saying with the iron gag.
Yeah,
Um,
that's so intense.
so their rooms were fitted with these like feed doors so they could eat their 3 square meals a day in total isolation. And guards often wore this fabric over their shoes so that prisoners couldn't hear their footsteps. And so most prisoners were sitting in silence for about 70% of the day. And the only book they were able to read at any time was the Bible. And the
Right.
skylights that you were talking about, they call it the eye of God. And any letters from home and no visitation was just not allowed.
Oh, yeah, that
Um,
didn't exist back then.
yeah, if they tried to tap on pipes or whisper to each other through vents or whatever, the consequences were so severe. Most of the time, they just wouldn't come back, and they're
Yeah.
probably dead. They probably died. Is what 90%
Oh, yeah.
of the time would
It's
happen.
also I feel like it's also worth pointing out, this was open and in operation during, like, the big tuberculosis pandemics, like, in
Mhm.
outbreaks and stuff. So, tuberculosis also wiped out quite a few of these inmates and stuff here.
Well, that and the water bath was a common,
Yes. Oh,
the most common when they would severely punish someone. So if you broke these rules during winter season, you would be subjected to this horrific punishment, which a guard would dunk your head in ice cold water, then hang you on a wall all night. And the frigid air would cause your skin to ice over before morning, and many of the people obviously didn't make it because they would just have the
right.
water drip from your head down your body while you were hung up by either your wrists or your armpits.
Ouch.
Yep. And they would just let you hang in the 20 some odd. It'd be like, what, 10 to 20 degrees during their winters. So it's like enough to the point where they would just freeze and the water on their body would freeze, causing their whole body temperature to drop way too quickly. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
they end up just dying. This is the thing. It's
You'd be
like,
naked that whole time too,
yeah,
and, like
yeah.
yeah.
It's like,
So, it's
how
severe
the fuck?
hypothermia, pneumonia, all that stuff.
It's interesting to me because I'm like, man, the stuff that was allowed to happen here just because the guards made it because they just could. They were like, oh, that's fine. We can just do this. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but it's insane the amount of things that went down here, and like now knowing all the things that happened. I can't imagine myself, like, going outside, somebody dunks your head in ice cold water, so you're already cold, and they almost do it to the point where you're almost drowning. But, like, last second, they pull you out, so you're already oxygen deprived, no idea what's going on, and then you get hung up by your arms, and you're just left there, and, like, if you know anything about, like, bodily stuff, if you are hung up by your
Yeah.
arms or your feet or anything, the blood in your arms will leave.
Yeah, it starts
Uh,
to drain
yeah,
and cut off circulation.
because even though the blood can get up there, it lowers it enough to the point where if you held it for too long, it would essentially die.
Yeah.
So even if you were left and you made it a couple of days or a day or more, after 24 hours of even doing that, if you survived the cold, um, it still would, you'd probably lose your arm.
Right, and surviving the cold itself is a big if.
Hmm.
So, like, yeah, it was all the things they did to these people is just insane and brutal. The fact that they had indoor heating, they took advantage of. They would tie people up and like cuff them basically, but it was back then, so they would just tie them up in the shower, turn the boiling water on, basically hot as fuck water, and just leave them in there.
And if you don't know, by the way, here's another bodily fact from Joseph today. If you are in hot water, which there is a reason that you shouldn't stay in a hot tub for longer than 15 minutes at a time, or a really, really hot boiling bath for more than 15 minutes at a time, because the
Yeah,
heat actually, so they say like the heat will get to your head. It's the same effect as heat stroke. your
Right.
body cannot handle the rising temperature inside. So your risen temperature inside will cause you to like lose oxygen intake. It's like you can't breathe as well. You get lightheaded, and eventually you will pass out because that
Right.
oxygen deprivation um is so severe. And the same thing with like in contact with skin. Typically, you don't stay inside something long enough to like boil yourself alive. But if you do stay inside a certain temperature for long enough periods, which could be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours and going up from there, your body will start to cook. And it takes a lot of time to heal from that. So we're
Yeah.
talking
Well,
like
it's
permanent
similar.
scars and burns and stuff.
Yeah, it's almost similar to the frog experiment. If you put a frog in boiling water, it's just gonna jump out. But if you put a frog in like regular like room temp water and slowly turn the temperature up, it'll stay in there till it gets boiled alive.
Hmm.
And so it's a very similar thing. Like even if you might not know what's happening, take it from someone who's had heat stroke so many times. I have to live in one of the coldest states in the United States right now. Because I get heat stroke real easy. When I go visit my mom in Texas, it's always rough. And I just get hot real easy now. Once you have it once, it's easier to get it every time after that.
Yeah. And it's like, it's because like you also like notice it
Yeah.
too. Like, I mean, I've gotten heat stroke before in Arizona. Not very fun. Let me just say that. Not a good time. Heat is almost like literally just as bad as cold. Because
Oh yeah.
the problem with the heat thing is like if you get too hot, there is a point where your body just stops with the nervous system. It just is like,
Right.
we're gonna protect you and make you stop feeling the pain because there's just no reason. It's trying to protect you. And that's the same with the
Yeah.
cold. Like after a while with
Exactly.
like frostbite and stuff, you just won't feel it. Your
Yep.
nervous system just turns off. So like there's plenty of times that this has happened throughout history that knowing these different the heat and water exchanges and the ice exchanges and the iron gag and all these other different torture methods, like
Yeah.
it wasn't
It
just
was
like,
it
oh,
was
this
real messed
happened
up.
once in a while. Like usually
No,
when you
this
were
was an
hung up
everyday
outside,
occurrence.
you would see like 4 or 5 other people enduring the same pain. So
Yeah.
if you want to call that a plus that you weren't alone, I guess you could, but it's disturbing. It's disturbing.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. Things have gotten better. I mean, it's still not ideal, but we definitely have systems and laws and departments in place now to help at least mitigate this kind of thing. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's still prisons that are really messed up and do really messed up stuff and bad things happen there. I'm 100% sure. But we do have things that keep it more balanced than it was then because you're not going to go to any prison in the United States nowadays and see people strung up outside naked and dripping wet in the snow.
I don't know about that, but I was like, you're gonna find my ass like that. That's what the government gonna do to me.
Well, I mean, you can find me like that too, but it's not a prison. I pay for that. No, I'm just kidding.
I pay for it. I get paid to do this. Actually, my part-time job.
Just hang out.
Legitimately, yeah, literally.
but and we've talked about Al Capone too, and people have made the assumption that maybe he is there because they occasionally still hear someone screaming Jimmy's name, and that would be crazy to me too.
I think that would throw me for a loop for sure if that was something that occurred. Because, like, it is something that, like, he wasn't there for that long.
No,
But it was
because he was
long
going
enough for him
crazy and they
to.
couldn't deal with
Yeah.
him.
Well, yeah, it was like an everyday thing. And I mean, it's interesting because he did live in such luxury here. And while in every other prison he was left alive in for the rest of his life, dog shit. Nothing. No radio, no TV, no good bed, no drapes, no any. I was like, he gave up a lot to try and escape this thing. So it
Oh
must
yeah,
have been petrifying to him enough that if it were that he was still there, I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah, me too. Just because like it took a piece of him, so, like, that one singular thing, like, the screaming of the Jimmy, I can see that being there, but to say his ghost actually haunts there, I don't think I could see that. But I could see the residual energy somehow of him screaming like that every day out of legitimate pure terror could get
Being like
trapped
an
there,
echo
you know?
through time type deal, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I could see it as well. Like I
Aliens.
said, I think he was served he was there for 8 months
Yeah, not even
for
like
I
a
think a
full year.
concealed weapon. It was like a concealed weapon, and that was the reason that he was posted
Even
out of there.
there.
Yeah, so like it
Yeah.
wasn't even like a big fucking deal either, which is insane. I think it's interesting. It's just such a weird thing to go
Yeah,
through
and
these different like hauntings and stuff as well, especially in this penitentiary, because there's like the well documented like screams, the rattling of the
oh, yeah.
cells. There's and I mean it goes beyond just 10, 20 experiences. It's thousands. Thousands of
Oh, yeah.
people come in here every day and
They,
thousands of people experience things.
oh, yeah, they interviewed a tour guide that I watched in a thing when I was researching this, and he said that there's not a single tour that goes without somebody experiencing something. They've had everything, like you said, noises, scratches, to people getting pushed. One lady said she swore someone slapped her ass, turned around, nobody there. Several people have reported trying to take pictures of like cells or something, and like as they're going to click the picture, something bangs on the door on the cell and scares the crap out of them. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot of the
so
experiences here.
even today those experiences happen.
The thing that gets me the most about this haunting in this location specifically is like these all happen during the daytime.
Oh, yeah.
Like these aren't like that's my favorite, probably my favorite haunting experiences are ones that happen in the day, where it's not covered by darkness, it's not shrouded in this veil, it's just plain
It
to
almost
see.
feels more legitimate,
Yeah, because it's like it doesn't matter what time of day they're there, and it's
right? And they're gonna
eternity,
let you know they're there.
and that's the thing that I think just fucks with me the most, honestly, when it comes to this kind of place. Is just like there's so many dead here that it's almost impossible to believe that there's not something going on or someone there.
Right, yeah, over the let's see, 1829 to 1971, so that's 142? Yeah, 142 years there. There was, like, almost 1,000,000 inmates, I think it was 750,000 total
Hmm.
that went through there, and
Yeah,
a lot of them died there. A lot. So it's like you said, it's with like Pavelia Island, like Alcatraz, like any of these big haunted locations where hundreds, if not thousands of deaths have happened. It's almost hard to believe that it's not haunted. Like, there's no way that much pain and suffering can go on in a single place and negative energy or
that's the
emotions
thing.
or things.
It wasn't even. It wasn't. I have to emphasize this because I think it's very important. It wasn't just the inmates that were like the most vile of the vile murderers.
Right.
We're talking, dude, kids that were charged with petty crimes like stealing an apple
Yeah,
type shit.
burglary would get you sent here.
And then like so like you got all manners of people experiencing the same forms of torture. So it's not just, oh, this is the most evil place because there's evil people in here. Some of them
Right.
stole to survive and they were put here for years.
Yeah,
So,
and like we said, some of the guards were really messed up too. And what's really funny about that is it was the Quakers that opened this prison, so the Quakers who hired the guards, and Quakers claimed to be pacifists, but their guards invented new torture methods.
well, that goes
It's just
into the warden a little bit.
yeah,
Like the warden at the time when it was opened had created a lot of the original torture methods, and that was their
yeah,
form of reformatory stuff to help the prisoners, you know, get back into society, so to speak.
Right.
But the crazy
And
part about
John,
that is just, ugh, it's
sorry, I
one
do want to
person.
hear what you're gonna say about the wardens. Um, but I just wanted to, I just pulled this up. I was looking for it while we were talking about the kids. The
Mhm.
youngest ever prisoner at Eastern State Penitentiary was John Maxfield. 1840. He was 11 years old.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not
They
surprised.
sent him to this prison.
And again, this is a prison for everyone. For
Yeah.
there's like because the prison system today, we have minimum security, medium security, maximum security prisons.
Right.
Maximum security prisons are the ones where they hold the serial killers, the serial rapists, stuff like that. People that are just evil to their core,
Right. And minimum security is where they hold people that did like tax fraud.
petty
Like,
crimes, and they're
yeah,
able to like
yeah,
again
yeah. It
with the
was really bad.
wardens. The funny part about the wardens is that the wardens weren't chosen by elected vote. The warden would choose one of the other prisoners or one of the other prison guards to become the next warden. So they would essentially just train up a different warden to make new things, new torture methods. And it's like, so the warden would always get changed into another warden that was bound to be another torturer. So it just kind of was like that clear until I think it was the 1950s when they finally changed the ideals to from one inmate to two to three. They made
Yeah, and it
votes.
went from a warden to like a board almost.
hmm And
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think is also insane is it took them almost 100 years to get out of the practice of all
Well,
these different things.
that's a I hate to get on the soapbox a little bit here, but unfortunately, that's a problem that we see happen in so many aspects of our society is that a lot of these things are ran by old-fashioned folk or people who have old-fashioned ways of speaking or
Deals,
thinking,
yeah.
pardon me, and they're like, "Well, it's just always been this way, so why change it?" Because adapt or die, motherfucker. That's why.
Well, you're not wrong, and like I said, man, it's very interesting to know all the things that are happening, uh, especially today with our own prison systems. Like I know we have different problems than we do before. I mean, we're not dealing with people that are hung up in the middle of the night, freezing to death. Like otherwise that'd be like a huge news story. But we're still dealing with a lot in our prison systems, and we're also dealing with a nationwide lack of prison guards because of the harsh reality that is like they don't want to enforce the laws as much as like these other people because it's seen as cruel. That's kind of what I've seen over the course of the years, and I myself had wanted to be a correctional officer, and so I went through a lot of stuff, and they had trained me a lot before I was doing the test and everything. They talked to me a lot about what the job entails, and a lot of it is not. It's very controversial. Like
Right.
what is rehabilitation versus just throwing someone in a box forever? You know, it's kind of like rehabilitation is a big thing in a lot of countries, and it's not the biggest thing here in America because it is easier to just because the problem is you're essentially saying you're throwing someone in there until they die, so they might as
Right.
well just be dead. You might as well have sentenced them to death.
Yeah, that was like we've said it a couple times, like Pavelia Island, when they would go there to get better, it was a death sentence.
And so it's kind of the same thing nowadays, but a little different. It's like you'll get to live. You will live, probably. Air quotes, probably.
Right, yeah,
Um,
probably.
but it's just like what kind of life are you going to live, and what kind of rehabilitation is available to you, and stuff like that. Where like obviously in this time, that the rehabilitation state for them, you had to be a perfect individual. To which,
Oh,
in
yeah.
Quakers' religious portions of this, just in the religious portion of this, to be perfect or be rehabilitated, you had to not only accept God, you had to have what was it? So you had to accept God, and then you had to cleanse yourself of all the sins that you've committed. Which
Yeah.
a sin you could commit would be talking to another prisoner during your rehabilitation. So you could have to start the process over again if you ever mess something up. So that's one of the things about the Eastern State Pen is like it really was like a you cannot conform because by the time you conform, you're probably already dead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, it's much different like nowadays. I have a buddy in prison right now who goes on like Facebook lives and stuff. And like he's got a PS5 in prison right now. And I'm like, "What the hell?" But you know what? I don't think he's ever worried about being thrown against the wall and freeze to death outside. Like that is just so brutal, man.
But it does take an interesting take on it, doesn't it? When you think about it, you're like, is this really punishment or is this really rehabilitation? What is this? You know, like it's hard because everyone has a different moral stance on things. It's
Right.
the same thing as like the death penalty. There's so many different positions people can take. Like some people think, oh, it's better for them to live out their life in prison where they can't do anything and then they die there. But the thing is too,
Right.
you also gotta think it's like if they're rich enough or they have like influence enough, they still can live fulfilling lives within that prison system. That's
Yeah,
a big
exactly.
if,
And that's
but it
crazy.
is it is something that's like happens all the time, and people don't really think about that much. It's the same thing, like for the death penalty, it's just a very controversial thing. Same with the prison rehabilitation thing of today. It's just very controversial. We've kind of come to a consensus for the death penalty in a lot of states where it's like we're just not gonna do it. It's too controversial. It costs too much to do it. It's just a pain in the ass for us to do, and it's just not something that we care about really. So
Right. Well, that's also because we're a for-profit prison system, unfortunately, here in America now. So
yeah,
if you kill a prisoner, you're gonna lose some of that money. So
yeah, yeah. It's the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just a very interesting dilemma in today's versus yesterday's
Right.
systems. And like I said, like it does not blow my mind at all that these places are haunted with the amount of things that happen to them and the amount of things that go on and the thoughts and the imagery, like even the idea of the chair, like the mad chair you were talking about, right? Like
Oh
you
my
know
gosh, yeah,
that
just getting
you
tied up
are
somewhere and left.
soiling yourself. This is someone that is going to soil themselves after 3 days. It's
And
just
if
gonna
they have
happen.
any kind of cuts or anything, and they
Infected,
soil themselves and that gets in there, boom, septic. You know what I mean?
and you're dead. You're
Yeah.
probably dead because at this time it still wasn't very clean.
Right. There was a
So
at the risk of getting a little graphic, there was an old torture method that basically was like this, but it was to torture people to death, and it was called the boats. And they would tie you up, put you in the bottom of a boat, cover you in like honey and stuff like that, and then put another boat basically on top of it, so only your head was sticking out. And then they'd
mm,
put you on the water, and then the smell of all the honey and stuff would invite bugs in, and
and
then
they
you'd end up
they just
soiling yourself, and that would invite more in, and then you just deal with that till you died, basically. You'd go septic, and like I said, I don't want to get too graphic with it, but imagine, you know.
it's just similar situations where it's like horrific. And for
Yeah.
this to happen to a person is just like very interesting because like again, to take the idea of what was going on then and then to what you're bringing up with your friend that had the PS5 and everything, like that's night
Right.
and day. You know, that is night and day
Yeah.
difference. And it almost begs the question, is it enough to be a punishment or is it more humane? It's like it kind of feels to me like sometimes I think about this too is like we've gotten to the point where I almost am like, is this like a timeout for like adults?
Right.
But I just think it's interesting. It's an interesting topic and an interesting talk for like a lot of different things like that, especially in the values of people now versus
Yeah.
then. Like obviously, like the death penalty with like executions were still being held clear until what the last beheading. There was one last guillotine use.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly when that happened.
It was
Um.
recent. The last time it was used was on September 10th, 1977. That's only 50 years.
Oh wow.
So to think that that we have progressed a lot, but not 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 in extreme, strides. It's just
Right.
interesting to me because it makes me think about like the future, especially because I know we see this as like ancient and there's like a bunch of evil deeds that have happened throughout the world. There's
Oh,
still
it's gonna
things
be
like that
a
happening, so it makes me wonder in the next 100 years when somebody goes back and views our history, what are they going to view as haunting as what we've done?
So I'm gonna call it now, Joey. In a few hundreds, thousands years, or whatever, when they dig up these old audio archives and are listening to them, they can point to me and be like, "That guy got it right." I'm gonna say humans are gonna get to a point where we basically Australia Earth. So we're gonna find a new planet. We're all gonna go there, and then we're gonna send all the criminals to here, the old planet, and be like, "Nope, go deal with that." And there's basically gonna become a prison planet. And I
I was
think
gonna,
that's what the future
I
is
was
gonna
gonna
be.
say, I was like, you were going towards Prison Planet, and I was like, we put a predator on that planet and let it just loose.
Just let it loose. Just have fun.
We let that loose. Let them fight
We
for
it
themselves.
we'd become a legend in like Predator lore. It'd be like, yeah, the real heaven is getting to go to a planet where no one can fight back. Like, look,
And oh, what was it?
we're going
So
to Disneyland. Fucking
one of my things that I think would happen a lot in my brain is the path that you can just jack into somebody's brain and then just like give them 100 years or whatever
Oh
sentence
man.
and then just give it to them in an instant, but their brain sees it as like the time that has passed. So if you get
Yeah.
a 10-year sentence, they just boop you and it's
Boop yeah.
done within a second. You just look at them, blink, and they're already back. But to them, it's been 5, 10 years, or if it was like,
That's how I assume cryostasis works. Is you're basically going to go to sleep and then you're going to wake up, and to you it's not going to feel like much time has passed,
I'm not a
but in
big
reality it'll be.
cryostasis guy. I believe in the gel stasis theories.
Yes, that's
Gel
better, I think
stasis
too,
a lot
personally.
because that gel is like sap.
Freeze me
But
in amber.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I just think it's interesting because I think that that would be horrific for somebody with 7 lifetimes or 10 lifetimes, and they
Oh
just like
gosh.
plug you in with 10 lifetimes worth of. I don't know. Like in my head, I like to think of it as like the endless walk through a desert type shit. Or
Oh
like they
yeah.
just but do you get to customize your own hell? I was thinking about it. I was like, do you want the frigid frost winters or the deadly hot desert biome?
I'll
Ooh, do you guys have
right.
the endless crocodile swamps? I was reading about that one online. No, but we can download it as a Chrome extension for you.
As a Chrome extension.
I guess I'll go with the desert.
One of my favorite like mundane hells ever was in a show called Supernatural. Crowley made hell just waiting in line. Like this that's it. They just wait in line perpetually forever.
I always thought that my number one hell would be that moment when you go to when you go to eat something and you can't like it just like falls away
Oh.
right before you bite into it or something, and like there's just like thousands of your favorite foods in front of you, but every one you try, you pick it up with the fork picks it up, you go to put it to your mouth and it just drops and falls away, and you're just like that would
Damn.
I think that would be my worst. That or water just drop me into deep sea and I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
So that reminds me of a joke. Remind me when we're done recording, and I'll tell you. But my favorite rendition of hell currently is there's a gal on TikTok. Of course, TikTok might be going away, so who knows? But she did just write a book, and it's going to be part of a trilogy. She goes by See You Later. Her real name is JC. She does a series of skits called The Hell's Bells on TikTok and hopefully YouTube and stuff. I'm not sure if she's moving over there or Red Note or wherever. But their rendition of hell is like, it has the rings like floors basically, and like the
Mhm.
first two floors are just like intensive therapy before you basically go to get reincarnated to try again for a paradise, and then all the other floors are torture floors, and you basically work your way up depending on what you did in life, of course, you know what I mean.
Mhm.
um And she's like, you go through universal judgment, so that hell that she deals with specifically is like the Christian Catholic type of hell, you know what I mean? A lot of fire and brimstone. But if someone else believed different, they might get judged based on a different system, and so they call it the universal judgment. And I like that whole take on it all. It's a lot more comforting, I think, to think about it that way.
I could get down with that. Yeah,
But all these ghosts, they didn't go through judgment. They're trapped in prison. Rough.
that's got to be the weirdest thing too for me. Is like I always wonder, like spirits like always end up in the worst fucking places, and I'm like, dog, like I wonder how that
Right. I know.
happens.
You wonder. It almost makes you wonder what it's like through their conscious. Like you
Hmm.
do you know you're a dead spirit? Are you aware of what's happening? Are you just confused? Like,
It's
you know what I
another
mean? And then
interesting
of
thing to
course,
think about because you're also like, when you die, your brain is still active for like 5 minutes,
oh yeah.
so you still have thoughts even as you're dead. So it's like
Yeah, they say it's your life flashing before your eyes, but at the same time no one's come back to tell us, so
the one thing that always messed me up when I was younger is there's a theory out there that like us living right now is us recounting our lives. So
oh
like your
jeez.
brain's like your life flashed before your eyes. Like this is what's happening to us at the moment, and the end is when we wake up, and that's the light, right? It's like when you actually do reach the end of your life, that is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's because you're like you snap back into it and you realize, oh my God, wait, no, that was all. This is all a thought. These are all memories. This isn't me right now. These are memories. I always thought that was
That's
funny because
so
it was like
crazy.
a weird inception where it's like
Yeah.
you already have lived this life, and that's why you get deja vu because it's part of your
Ah.
like. Yeah,
That's crazy.
I just think that's super cool.
I've seen a couple I like where one was like, the light you see is actually the lights in another hospital room as you get reincarnated. I was like, that one's kind of fun.
I've seen
Um,
that one, yeah, that's pretty cool.
my favorite one though, it actually comes from a meme. I don't think this is the case, but I would laugh my ass off if it is. And it was like a guy living his whole life and then he dies, and then it cuts to like an alien in a spaceship with a bong, and his friends are like, "Did you feel anything?"
I also think about the like the fucking Rick and Morty Roy,
Oh
like he
yeah.
plays the game, and it's like,
Yeah,
what
you
if that's
went
all we're
back to the
doing?
carpet store?
Yeah, exactly. You looking stupid. But yeah, I thought that was like interesting. Just the different ideals for it. Yeah, that's all I
Absolutely.
have on the Eastern State Pen though, buddy. That's spookiness we can dive into, I guess,
Yep,
on my
yeah, we
end.
talked about the soap lady and all the possible hauntings, the fact that there's still bangings and scratchings, but they're still offering tours, so go ahead and go sign up for that if you want. And if you're wanting to go on Halloween, make sure to book a few months in advance because it gets booked up quick. It's very, very popular. It's
Yeah,
called like
it is.
Terror Behind the Walls or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money
Um,
too, so bring your
but
cash.
other than yeah, but other than that, definitely check it out. It's one that I think I like a lot. Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters have both been there, I believe, so you can always go
Hmm.
watch those too. And before we go, Joey, I think that we should accept our new end of the podcast tradition and plug your stuff.
I shall. And if anybody, if you guys have been watching for a while and you guys are ever interested in TTRPGs or card games or anything of the sort, please go check me out over on patreon.com/patchworkgames. That is also going to be where we will house some of our stuff later on this year. So we will definitely let you know when that happens, and then you guys can go ahead and subscribe over there. Even if you subscribe to my Patreon just for free to get the updates and everything, that would help out a ton, and you guys can get a ton of our notes and everything. And of course, I also do deals where if you do subscribe to us on the highest tiers, two highest tiers, you can either get a 15% discount on everything in the store or a 25% discount on everything in my store, which would also include a Delve Deeper stuff. So if you guys ever think about doing that and you guys want to become members for that, you can always snag all of our things 25% off when they drop.
Woot woot. Heck yeah, definitely do that. And that is Patchwork, Patchwerk, right?
It is, it is.
Yeah, so definitely go do that. And while you're looking at that, looking around at stuff, maybe you're thinking, hey, I want somebody to voice something funny for me or do a commercial for me. You could go to my website for that. That one is blzzrd, blizzardwizard.com. You can also find me on all socials. TikTok might be going away, but I'm still out there on Facebook, Blue Sky, Red Note, Lemonade, unless that goes away too. Insta, all that stuff, YouTube. So under the exact same name, BLZZRD, WZZRD, Blizzard Wizard. And thank you guys for all the love and support. We love all of our delvers, and we definitely hope you guys come with us on our next delve on a delve deep.
Yeah. It's gonna be awesome next time as we delve back into aliens, folks. So I love aliens,
Aliens!
and it seems like you don't all love aliens as much. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody here
I
loves
know.
aliens. And so thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys then.